City and community leaders in Springfield are responding to a recent spike in violence with an action plan. They met earlier today to discuss what those plans entail. Good Thursday evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us on Western Mass News at 10 on Fox 6. I'm Matt Satilli. Western Mass News reporter Maria Wilson now joins us live in studio with the latest. Maria.
Matt, we heard from city leaders earlier today about their action plan to keep the city safer moving forward, but one local expert I spoke with still has some lingering concerns.
More police, more surveillance is something that might work in the short term, but if that's not executed properly, it can actually just make things worse.
Local criminal justice professor Craig Dutton reacting to the recent efforts to crack down on violence in Springfield. A citywide effort to quell violence is now underway in Springfield. The city's mayor, police superintendent, and other leaders revealing how they're addressing the issue. Their efforts following a recent uptick of violence in the city, including a double homicide on June 7th and 2 double shootings this past Saturday, which claimed the lives of 2 people and injured 2 others, as well as a shooting on Monday on Ashmont Street. Now, Springfield leaders say we can expect to see more police in the streets.
There's very high visibility of patrols of our police department and also undercover activities that are going on.
But Dutton says this tactic may come at a cost.
The problem often is putting more police officers on the streets has a deterrent effect because the police are more visible. But if the officers are too aggressive with doing that job, they run the risk of kind of undermining any sort of community building that they should be doing.
Dutton says a good relationship between the police and the public is a key factor in keeping the streets safe.
Without that sort of mutual trust and respect, not a lot happens when it comes to actually stopping and preventing crime. If the police and the community are really going to make an effort to build and strengthen their relationships, that could most likely be the most effective.
Overall, some of the city's leaders' efforts include an increase of police patrols, improved and new technology like cameras and surveillance, strengthening the public's relationship with the faith community, and Mayor Sarno's push for bail reform legislation. Springfield police say repeat offenders, which include the suspect in Saturday's double shooting on School Street, are one of their biggest challenges they face. And when it comes to repeat offenders, Dutton says one solution could start from behind bars.
One of the issues with recidivism or repeat offenders is giving them the resources once they've been released to not go back to where they were. The general public seems to think that money is not well spent. It's coddling criminals, where it could be better for preventing further crime from happening or future crime.
Another element of this plan is to include churches and parents as a safe zone for the city's young people. Reporting live in studio, Maria Wilson, Western Mass News.